Good morning. I'm Laura Shemick. I am the service leader today. Our call to worship today is from our own hymnal. From arrogance, pompousness, and from thinking ourselves more important than we are, may some saving sense of humor liberate us. For allowing ourselves to ridicule the faith of others, may we be forgiven. From making war and calling it peace, special privilege and calling it justice, indifference and calling it tolerance, pollution and calling it progress, may we be cured. For telling ourselves and others that evil is inevitable while good is impossible, may we stand corrected. God of our mixed up, tragic, aspiring, doubting, and insurgent lives, help us to be as good as in our hearts we have always wanted to be. Amen.
Good morning. I'm Rima Cameron, and I'm pleased to be with you here today on this day of worship. I share leadership of today's service with my wife, Laura Shemick, Hannah Belzer, accompanist, Yvonne Duval, music director, Corey Ness, director of religious exploration, song leader and special music by David Spear, and service tech Amy Firestein. Whether you are a member or a visitor joining us in person or you are worshiping virtually, we are so happy you have chosen to join us this morning. For our worshipers online, a Zoom online coffee hour will follow the services today at 11:30. For those here in person, we will not have coffee hour this morning. That's going to be in a couple weeks. Please remember to look at the sign-up to help with in-person coffee hour provided to you each Friday in the news you can use. We are so happy you have chosen to worship with us, and we welcome you to our fellowship hours and any other in-person or online activities held by UCH. In the spirit of the transformative power of community in all of its forms, I'm so happy to welcome you to UCH. Whoever you are, wherever you live, whomever you love, whatever you do for a living, you are welcome at the Unitarian Church of Harrisburg.
Good morning. It's just too much, isn't it? In just 10 days, we have experienced another major trauma as our hearts have been shattered by the unspeakable horror of the school shooting in Uvalde and by the white supremacist murders in Buffalo, New York. In these past 2 years, as we have navigated the pandemic, we have experienced trauma after trauma. How much can we endure? Once again, our communities are struggling to manage overwhelming grief, loss, and pain. And again, in the wake of yet another tragedy, we hear calls for change echoing across the country. As we face so many crises in our country, we know our fights for freedom and justice are deeply interconnected. Our faith as Unitarian Universalists calls us to act in our Unitarian Universalist principles, as well as in our sacred work for social justice. For it is no longer enough to grieve. We must act. We must call our policymakers to act with courage and urgency to keep our communities safe from gun violence. But before we do, I invite you to listen to the following poem by Odette Fulbright. If you find yourself numb, bereft of comfort, speechless with agony and fury, know that you are not alone. The first thing you must do is to take care of yourself as a good gift, and then of those whose lives make your own life whole. Next, do just one thing to change the tide. Speak to one person Write one thing from your heart. Show up in one place where hands are needed. We don't need to explain this madness to anyone, for we are living it together. We see the inaction and the tidal wave of trauma and suffering. We understand the hypocrisies and the lies, the way attention rises and fades away, and the helpless feeling it all engenders. Yet, we are not helpless. Take care of yourself. Take care of your loved ones. Offer care to your community, and do at least one thing. That's the way we go forward together.
Thank you, Corey. Our chalice lighting. In our time of grief, we light a flame of sharing, the flame of ongoing life. In this time, when we search for understanding and serenity in the face of loss, we light this sign of our quest for truth, meaning, and community. Please rise as you are willing and able to sing hymn number 127 in the Gray Hymnal.
This is a beautiful old Germanic hymn that you may not be that familiar with, so Hannah's going to play it the whole way through one time first, and then we'll join in with our 3 verses. Can I see another's woe, and not be in sorrow too? Can I see another's grief, and not seek for kind relief? Can I see a falling tear, and not feel my sorrow share? Can a father see his child weep, nor be with sorrow filled? Can a mother sit and hear infant groan and infant fear? No, no, never can it be. Never, never can it be.
Good morning. My name is Corey, and I serve as your Director of Religious Exploration. Today's story is titled The Hugging Tree, a story about resilience by Jill Nymark. Has anybody ever read this book before? No? Well, I hope you enjoy it. It's a lovely, lovely story. On a bleak and lonely rock by a vast and mighty sea grew a lonely little tree where no tree should ever be. Now, how it got there, no one knew. It sprouted stems and little leaves, as any tiny seed will do. There's hardly any dirt for me, no forest breeze, no birds, no bees. But I will do the best I can to make this rock my home. Tiny roots pushed day and night, and bit by bit the rock gave way, a smidge, an inch, a foot, then 2. The tree grew and grew and grew and grew. The ocean hugged the rocky shore. I like you near me, little tree. Let's keep each other company. Soft golden sunbeams kissed its crown, warm as honey pouring down. At night it raised its branches high to greet the moon up in the sky. I wax and wane, I ebb and flow, I cycle through from full to thin, and when I'm done, I start again. That's how life is, you know. One summer noon, a pair of loons landed on its canopy. A pretty tree, a sparkling sea. Shall we make this place our home and raise our baby chicks right here? The little tree warmed up with pride and spread its branches high and wide. I'll be your home, the tree replied. And can you tell me if you've seen the forest where my family grew? We've built a nest in trees like you quite far from here, and so you blew many nights in many days. You flew on wind just like we do. They built their nests, they lay their eggs, and soon 2 baby chicks were born. Summer passed, autumn too. The little tree turned red and gold. Then winter came with its howling winds and cutting cold that broke its boughs. The loons flew south, the sea all ice, the rock all snow, the moon was lost in thunderclouds. Mighty cliff, hold me tight, don't let me blow away. Little tree, with all my might, I hold you close, night and day. Storms will come and storms will go. At last the sun melted the snow, but now the tree could not grow. The storm had torn the tree's roots. The moon gazed down softly and said, sometimes we lose our way, but with some help, we start again. That's how life is, you know. And soon a child came running by, skipping stones into the sea. When they saw the little tree, they stopped and stared. The child touched the tiny leaves and felt the ragged roots. They shook their head and said, I can bring just what you need. I can help you, little tree. A tree can't hug a child. It has no hands or arms, but it can hug you with its heart, and that is just as deep and warm. Every day the child came back carrying a full backpack. From the pack they took a tin and poured out rich brown earth. They packed the roots and tucked them in. The child planted flowers around the tree and made a path for all to see. Now everyone will know that even on a granite cliff, a little tree can grow. And then the child went to sleep and dreamed the things that all children dream of. Now, every day, new people stop to rest beneath a little tree and dream the things we all dream of. To love, to share, to give, to dare to grow, just where we are. And to this very day, they come. For on a splendid sunny rock by a warm and bright blue sea is a great big hugging tree that grows just where it is meant to be.
The sun, nor the furious winter's rages. Thou thy worldly task hast done, thou art gone and taken thy wages. churches. Golden lads and girls all must, as chimney sweepers come to dust. Fear no more the frown of the great. Thou art past the tyrant's stroke. Care no more to clothe and eat. To thee the reed is as the oak. The scepter learning physic must follow this and come to dust. Fear no more the lightning flash, nor the all-dreaded thunderstone. Fear not slander, censure rash. Thou hast finished joy and moan. All lovers young, all lovers must consign to thee and come to dust. No exorciser harm thee, nor no witchcraft charm thee. Ghost unlaid forbear thee, nothing ill come near thee. Quiet consummation have, and renowned be thy grave.
Thank you, David. That was beautiful. Now is the time in our service that we devote to joys and concerns. If you have a concern or if you have a joy that has troubled you over the past week, please feel free to come forward during the music and either drop a stone or light a candle, or do both as you wish. And you may also write down your joy or concern on a slip of paper using the slip of paper and pens over to the side near the stones. If you wish, we will read your joy or concern aloud during the time devoted to that after the music has ended. Please rise as you wish. that remain in our hearts unsaid, and especially for the people of Uvalde, Texas. Some joys and concerns. Patty Hazel has concern for a UCH member, Pat Kaufman, who fell recently in her home and has a compression fracture on in her back. She will not be able to drive for the next 8 weeks until she will welcome calls or visits to her home. Lois Voigt says she is returning to South Dakota this week for the funeral of her dad's youngest brother, the last of her parents' 16 siblings. Sadness for the passing of a generation, and joy for a life well lived, and for the opportunity to gather with family. Rick and Evan Hawley are happy to share the occasion of their 18th anniversary of their marriage in the sanctuary. We will now have a moment of silence, and then we will have our meditation hymn.
And now we will do the responsive reading, 661. I'll read the bold and you will read the italics. We have a great deal more kindness than is ever spoken. How many persons we meet in houses, whom we scarcely speak to, whom yet we honor, and who honor us. Read the language of these wandering eye beams.
Good morning. Monday is Memorial Day, a day we have set aside in this country for many, many years to honor those who have served and died in our armed forces. There are a few places that can lay claim to inventing Memorial Day, which actually has been invented in many places. The town of Boalsburg in Centre County, near State College, where I grew up, claims to be a birthplace of Memorial Day. But in truth, Memorial Day is one of those communal ideas that arose spontaneously in numerous places after the Civil War, which is the war in which the largest number of Americans died. Today, we often pass over the original meaning of Memorial Day in favor of a celebration of the beginning of summer, with the opening of pools and with outdoor picnics. But we still remember those who have died before their time. Today is the fourth day since our nation's most recent mass school shooting. This month also marks the end of the 26th month since the COVID-19 virus began ravaging this nation and every other nation in the world. When I began working on this sermon, the Uvalde school massacre had not yet occurred, and so I had planned to speak only on the COVID pandemic and how hard it can be to be compassionate at times, given the actions of various people. But, as always, events have overtaken plans. These names may sound familiar to you. Roseburg, Oregon, Red Lake, Minnesota, Pulse, Orlando, Florida, Sandy Hook, Connecticut, Virginia Tech, Buffalo, New York, Laguna Woods, California, Tree of Life, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Parkland, Florida, Columbine, Colorado, Santa Fe, Texas, Uvalde, Texas. Every one of these places has been the site of a mass shooting in the past 23 years. I, of course, have not mentioned every mass shooting, just some of those where a school was involved or where more than 5 people were killed. I have left many, far, far too many, mass shootings off the list. The people killed there were not soldiers or sailors sworn to defend orders, or defend their country and obey orders. They were people like you and me. They were going about their daily lives when a horrible mix of political apathy and unrestrained anger or mental illness ended those lives. We should add the names of all those victims to the list of those who we remember on Memorial Day, as we should also add the names of those who died on September 11th, 2001, those who died in the Oklahoma City bombing, and other terrorist attacks. And now, back to the idea of compassion. The COVID virus has spread everywhere, even to remote Amazonian villages. People and many species of animals have been afflicted by the virus, and as of a couple of weeks ago, 1 million people in our country have died. At least 1 million, I should say, because record keeping is of various accuracy in various places. Can we just think for a moment about that? 1 million people. Here, in the country where we nearly killed off, but then brought back the bald eagle, the place where scientists created the atomic age with all its terror and possibilities, the place from which you humans first reached the moon. It is the place that invented universal education. It is the nation with the highest number of deaths from COVID. We grieve for those who have died and for those who recovered but who are still disabled by the virus. We grieve for those who were isolated for months, stretching into years, out of caution and fear. We grieve for those many who were not permitted to hold the hands of those they loved as they died. This is a Memorial Day for all of us, not only for those who died in our military. It is a Memorial Day for those who did 48-hour shifts to care for the dying, for those who went out endlessly on ambulance calls to care for the dying, for those who cared for the bodies of those who had died. This is a Memorial Day for those who could not stay home to avoid the virus and who became ill and suffered and died. This is also a Memorial Day for those who died when they could have remained among the living, no matter why. What do I mean by that? Well, in Mifflin County, which is about 60 miles northwest of here, COVID has killed at least 337 people as of April 1st. Because Mifflin is a rural county with a small population, the per capita death rate there is one of the highest in the nation. 591 deaths per 100,000 people versus the national average of 298 per 100,000 people. Of the 337 people who died in Mifflin County, 331 had not received even one vaccination against COVID. The Kaiser Health News article that reported this also states few residents wore masks, even when cases were high nationally and locally. This is shocking news. In this congregation, we are still wearing masks to services. Our congregation adopted virtual worship services the week the pandemic was declared in Pennsylvania. We immediately created a committee dedicated to protecting the congregation from the deadly virus. And that committee still continues its work today, which is why we are still wearing masks. We halted choir practices completely, but did not end choir music and services, which compelled our music director to engage in very rapidly developing computer skills that were very sophisticated. In a truly amazing feat, we created a search committee which searched out a new minister, who we then called despite the strictures of the pandemic. Our technically skilled members trained others how to do Zoom worship, and we all got to be experts in Zoom. Now, while we may not have prospered during the past 26 months, we certainly have carefully protected ourselves and diligently continued in worship, music, and religious exploration with courage, creativity, and not a little humor. I will forever remember the choir practices out in the parking lot last fall, in which members closely remembered the cartoon characters called Minions because of the headlamps we wore. And now for a few words on the concept of Schadenfreude. Dan Burnett, in an article in Science Focus from October of 2021, describes it as follows. First and foremost, humans are incredibly social animals. We humans are also instinctively aware of the general hierarchy, the pecking order, and our standing within it. There are a lot of ways to improve your social status, and raising our social status feels good because when we do it, it triggers the pleasure-creating pathways in our brain. One way for your social status to improve is for somebody else to lower theirs. And so, when we see someone mess up in ways that causes them to lose face, and thus lose social status, we can feel a burst of satisfaction as our own status is raised, at no cost to us. And so Schadenfreude. We also have the just world bias. Our brains have evolved to assume that the world is a fair place, even if the actual evidence doesn't support that. Our brains respond to perceived fairness and justice just like they do to raised social status. They like it. They like it a lot. And so when someone we deem to be of higher status, who perhaps achieve their status by means we deem to be unfair, comes a cropper and experiences appropriate failure and misfortune in ways that lower their standing relative to our own, it produces a heady cocktail of status and fairness at zero cost to us. Looked at that way, it would be more surprising if our brains didn't enjoy Schadenfreude. End of quote. So many people have silently snickered at anti-vaxxers or those who have loudly stated that the COVID virus is a hoax perpetrated by the government and by Bill Gates when they have become ill. Sometimes the snickering has changed to ridicule, and from silent snickering to loud voices and very public voices, as when Twitter users posted rude messages to families of anti-vaxxers who sought financial assistance for funerals after their loved ones passed away because of COVID. This is Schadenfreude. And now I'll turn to a psychological concept known as fundamental attribution error. Now, when we act, we know why we act. We know our reasons, and we know the reasons that we are acting as we do are correct and right, and that the actions we take are sensible. Okay, nobody here gets up in the morning intending to do stupid things that will end badly, right? Please nod. But when we see other people do odd or inexplicable things, we believe their actions are undertaken because of their character or their personality. The clearest example of this is when we are driving over the speed limit because we're late for an appointment. When we see another person weaving in and out of traffic going 90 miles an hour, well, we think that they're a reckless driver, or maybe a young show-off, or they have some bad reason for doing that. We know, of course, that we are disobeying the law for a good reason, because we are late for an appointment. Our violation is minor, but their actions are deadly dangerous and inexcusable. How many people have thought that? Everybody raise your hand, right? Okay. But maybe the other driver's wife is in the backseat of the car in the late stages of labor, or their child is bleeding to death in the hospital after an accident. As a rule, however, these are not the first thoughts that come to us. Fundamental attribution error suggests that during the pandemic, our compassion buttons were prone to frequent malfunctions. If we, in our careful church community, caught the virus, it was in spite of all our possible precautions. We acted correctly. We did the right things. We wore masks. We washed our hands. It was the extreme contagiousness of the virus that caused our illness. There was no more that we could have done. We did everything that we could possibly have done. And if we didn't get sick, me being one of those fortunate few, it was because we had acted correctly and reaped the benefits of our caution. After suffering through social isolation, through bidding wars for toilet paper, the inability to dine out, and learning to work from home if we were lucky. Now, fundamental attribution error theory suggests that if we saw others outside our community fall ill, we believed that they were scornful of science, or had faulty logic reasoning, or embraced conspiracy theories, or maybe they believed television personalities who, for their own reasons, poo-pooed vaccinations and masks and social distancing and hand washing. If we got sick, we had reasonable explanations and were blameless. If they got sick, they were careless or ignorant, or certainly not worthy of sympathy. Of course, this is not true. Many folks had no choice but to continue working in high-risk jobs because they were essential workers. Others had to work because they could not navigate the overly complex unemployment compensation system hastily set up to prevent economic chaos. Still, others were required to work in conditions that could have been safe, but were not safe because of the indifference of their employers to their health. And some feared that accepting vaccinations would allow authorities to arrest them and deport them from this country. We cannot know precisely why people who became ill and died, how they contracted the virus. And now looping back to the mass shootings issue. I'll wager that not too many of us here in this room are owners of firearms, probably because we are well informed that most people killed in their homes by firearms are killed by their own guns. that gun carriers do not have a significant advantage over unarmed people when crime occurs, and that there's a high correlation between having a gun in the home and of a resident's death by suicide. Probably most of us do not believe that a secret government cabal may swoop down upon us at any time and take away our freedoms. I'm sure very few of us believe that foreign invaders will come to America and be repelled by citizen soldiers who are wielding assault weapons. Most people who are responsible and sane use their weapons for hunting, target shooting, and home defense. But how would we feel if a grandchild of, say, Ted Cruz or former President Trump had been in a classroom in Uvalde or in Sandy Hook or Parkland? These politicians oppose any form of gun control and have never lifted a finger, as far as I know, to improve mental health services in our country. Would we feel that schadenfreude if we saw them becoming grieving grandparents? Fundamental attribution error and just world bias suggests that we would. Our UU faith calls us to affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of every person, to affirm and promote justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. And sometimes it is hard. It is very hard. But when we reach down into the depths of our souls, we can do it. Remember that everyone who died of COVID tried to stay well and believed they were acting correctly. Remember that every single issue Second Amendment voter and every politician who opposed gun control, who has lost a loved one to a mass shooting, believed that they were acting correctly. COVID and gun violence have both been a slow-motion tsunami in this country, a tornado that moves at a snail's pace, a tropical storm that stalled over us for 26 months. In the case of gun violence, far, far longer. We try to be compassionate, and we tire, and we fail. But we must try, and we must try again. We have all lost loved ones. On this Memorial Day, remember with compassion those who have died and those who have been left behind. This does not mean that we should be content with our current state of affairs. But as we fight for change, we must fight with respect for the inherent worth and dignity of others and with compassion as well as we can. Namaste. Blessed be. Go in peace, return in love.
Please join in the reading of the Unison affirmation, please. Love is the spirit of this congregation, and service is our gift. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to speak our truths in love, and to help one another. The Unitarian Church of Harrisburg is, as always, a freely gathered church of free people. The church is created, sustained, and supported by you. The ministry continues, even whether the church building is open or closed. Each month, we share half of our Sunday plate with the local nonprofit organization. This month, we share the plate with the Oliver Lagrone Scholarship. The Oliver Lagrone Scholarship Program offers the largest local scholarship available to graduates of Harrisburg Public High Schools. Scholars receive up to $12,000 annually and are assigned a mentor to provide advice and guidance during their post-secondary education. The scholarship is named for a former friend and supporter of UCH for many years. Oliver Lagrone was a nationally noted poet, sculptor, philosopher, and humanitarian. For those worshiping online, or for those here in person who wish to contribute online, please see the email with the link for today's service or visit uchbg.org homepage for options for contributing. For those who are here in the sanctuary who wish to contribute in person, the collection plates will be passed around by today's ushers. Your financial support and commitment matter. Please consider giving what you are able.
Our closing hymn today is number 1053, Rima and I.
No.
Nope.
Are we doing that now? Sorry. Is that it? I guess you're right.
Our closing hymn is number 1053 in your teal softback hymnal. Rima and I will sing the first two verses. You may join in if you wish, and please everyone sing the last verse. Well, it's not a verse, it's the time group.
How could
Help us to be the always hopeful gardeners of the Spirit, who know that without darkness, nothing comes to birth, as without light, nothing flowers. The service is at an end. Go in peace, return in love.